Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Today we will talk about reading comprehension. Well, reading comprehension is a very important component of reading skills. Before we go for today's lesson, I would like to share the review of the previous lesson. As far as the previous lesson was concerned, we talked about what is scanning. I shared a few definitions of scanning with you to add some clarity to your concept of scanning. Then I tried to give some examples from our daily lives about scanning. I tried to relate it to the life of an average Pakistani as well by sharing some examples where do we use scanning in our daily activities. The next step was that I tried to differentiate between skimming and scanning. If you remember, I discussed this difference when I was talking about skimming in a session. However, in the scanning session, the focus was on scanning when I differentiated. With this, we moved on to how to scan. I shared a few steps of scanning, techniques and tips that help in scanning. Towards the end of that lecture, I explained advantages and disadvantages of scanning in comparison. And the session ended with some practice that we had through some scanning activities that we shared. With this, we come to today's lesson. Well, today's lesson is on reading comprehension. In today's lesson, we would share the following points. I would elaborate on a few of these. I would explain a few with the help of examples. We would start with what is reading comprehension and what does it mean. Then we would establish a relationship between reading and the reader. The mental processes involved in comprehension would be discussed. This would lead us towards factors affecting comprehension. We would explore the triangle of the relationship of reader, text and context, and we would see how each one of these affects the other. Then I would give you some reading comprehension strategies and would share some benefits of using these strategies. The question, what if reading comprehension fails, will also be discussed. Activities and exercises to improve reading comprehension will be presented and shared, and I hope that through these activities you would learn how you can improve your reading comprehension with your individual practice sitting back at your homes. Starting with reading and the reader. Dear students, reading is a complex phenomenon that mainly involves a text and a reader. There are specific meanings encoded into the text, and the reader's duty is to decode such meanings successfully. So you see, it depends who is the reader. The knowledge of the reader, the attributes of the reader, the kind of association and reaction to the text by the reader. This is what would give meanings to the text. Notice this part of the definition. The reader's duty is to decode such meanings successfully. So whatsoever is wrapped, whatsoever is encapsulated in the words or in the message by the writer, that is to be translated by, that is to be decoded by the reader. Reading is a process of constructing in meaning in which the reader is an active participant. Well, this is a very, I would say, modern approach or perspective towards reading. It used to be thought, say, a few decades back, that it is the reader who reads something that is encoded by the writer, and whatsoever the writer says is to be interpreted by the reader. Today's approach towards reading says that there is some message that the writer encodes in the text. However, it depends upon the reader what he or she decodes from that text. Which means if I am reading a text, I may decode it in a different way as you would do. And depending upon what I already know about the topic, what is my interest in that, how far I know the background, what are my opinions, perspectives and judgments about that particular issue that is discussed, that is talked about, or that is presented in the text, I would interpret the text. So, meaning does not flow automatically from the text to the reader. Rather, the text contains clues that the reader uses to generate meaning. So, what you need to understand is that these clues are just guiding lines for the reader to interpret the text. However, the real meaning to the text is given by the reader, not the writer. So, as a reader, you can read anything in a way that you interpret that. Do you have, by the way, some experience of reading something that maybe you read 10 or 15 years ago? Now, when you read it again, maybe you would have a different understanding of that. You would have a different interpretation of all that. It implies that depending upon the reading comprehension abilities of a reader, the meanings of the text would keep on changing. They would keep on being modified. They are to be interpreted in the light of what the reader reads and how the reader explores or opens the text up to investigate the meaning. According to National Reading Panel 2000, comprehension is a highly complex cognitive process involving the intentional interaction between the reader and the text to create meaning. Well, I would like you to focus on this definition. This is very important with reference to reading comprehension. Comprehension as a term in itself is a very, very complex cognitive process. What do I mean by cognitive? Mental process that involves mental activity, and it involves what? Intentional interaction, conscious interaction, where the reader makes an effort on his or her part to interact with what? The text. And the ultimate purpose is to create meaning. Please try to notice the ultimate purpose is to create meaning, not only to know the meaning that the writer has given. So this word create gives a lot of scope for the reader to handle, to deal with, or to interact with the text. Comprehension, in fact, does not just happen. It requires effort. And I would say a lot of effort when it comes to English as a foreign language for our Pakistani learners or students. Reading comprehension, in fact, refers to the ability to understand information presented in written form. While this process usually entails understanding text assignments, reading comprehension skills also may affect one's interpretation of directions on exams, labs and home assignments, and completion of job applications or questionnaires. In fact, if you look at your daily life reading activities, you would realize that reading comprehension is involved in almost all the kind of readings to understand, to interpret, to follow directions, etc. We define reading comprehension as the process of simultaneously extracting and constructing meaning. So it is a process of extracting and constructing meaning. Whatsoever the writer has sent you as a message, you extract that and you add to that meaning, you add to that message through the fund of knowledge that you have by interacting and involving with written language. Dear students, comprehension entails three elements. Number one, the reader who is doing the comprehension. Number two, the text. And number three, the activity. In all this, the reader, the text and the activity, what I would do is, in this triangle, I would place the text actually at the central point. The reader and the activity that the reader performs, they surround the text. In other words, I would say the factors that affect reading are three. Number one, reading always takes place within a context and is specific to the context that surrounds the act of reading. The three factors, that is the text, the reader and the context of the reading situation, influence reading. So whatsoever you read, it depends upon the nature and the type of the text. Number two, who is the reader of that text. And number three, in what context or background that text is to be read by that particular reader. Though each will be discussed separately, they are not in fact entirely separate. Actually, they are interlinked, they are interconnected. Rather, they overlap and interact to affect the reading process. None of these can be separated or can be examined in isolation from the other two. What is text? Well, text is broadly construed to include any printed text or electronic text. In today's world, with the help of technology, we come across a lot of texts that are in electronic form. Right now, what you are reading, sitting back there home, and as you are interacting with me through this text, actually this is again another electronic form. You read some texts on your mobiles, on your television screens, on your computer screens, etc. As far as the printed text is concerned, this is a traditional conservative form that has its own significance, and it has retained this significance despite all the technological advancements. In considering activity, we include the purposes, processes and consequences associated with the act of reading. So, the reading activity actually includes the purposes, processes and consequences that are associated with the text. Dear students, reading comprehension involves much more than readers' responses to text. Actually, reading comprehension is a multi-component, highly complex process that involves many interactions between readers and what they bring to the text. And what they bring to the text, by the way? Their previous knowledge, their strategy that they use for exploring the text or for reading the text, etc. As well as variables related to the text itself. That is, interest in the text, understanding of text types, etc. As far as the text is concerned, the vocabulary, sentence structure, and organizational patterns of reading materials vary. Well, what I would like to say is, depending upon the difficulty level of vocabulary, simplicity or complexity of sentence structure, and how the material is organized in terms of paragraphs within a text, whether the paragraphs are very short, very brief, or paragraphs are long, lengthy, with details, all these matter, and they really contribute in certain ways towards reading comprehension. Though fictional narratives differ from poems and infotexts, infotext means texts that are based on some information. There are also differences within the types. Just as all stories are not alike, not all infotexts are the same. And the reality is, a history text and a science text are as different as a history text and a story. So within the same genre, depending upon the subject, depending upon who has written it and for what purpose it is written, actually there can be a lot of variation in the texts. The features of any given text have a large impact on comprehension. While reading, the reader constructs various representations of the text that are important for comprehension. I repeat, while reading, the reader constructs various representations of the text. When I say various representations, what I mean by that is, मेरा ख्याल है आपको याद होगा जब आपके टीचर्स आपको फॉर एग्जांपल पोइट्री पढ़ाते थे क्लासेस में एट सेकेंडरी और मिडिल लेवल, दे वुड से अच्छा इसका क्या मीनिंग होगा, एंड देन दे वुड से अच्छा on another level what can be the meaning. So you would have 1, 2, 3 or more than 3 levels of meanings. So this is what I am referring to. Those representations include the surface code, that is the exact wording of the text. Number 2, the text base, that is idea units representing the meaning of the text, and the mental models, that is the way in which information is processed for meaning, that are embedded in the text. So the process of reading comprehension is complex and complicated in its nature, and it has multi-levels or layers on which the process takes place. With this we move on to the reader. The second important factor or element or component of reading comprehension. As a matter of fact, if you just separate the reader from the rest, reading comprehension cannot take place. It is the reader who does this process, it is the reader for whom the process is, and it is the reader in whose linguistic and cognitive capacity the process takes place. The reader also affects the reading process. When I say this, I mean the type of individual the reader is. A reader's physical and emotional state affects how she or he approaches reading experiences. Is he or she tired, hungry, happy, stressed, or anything else? Any one of these factors can and will, definitely they will, make a difference in how readers approach text. You would agree with me, एक ही story, for example, जो आप सिर्फ player reading के लिए भी पढ़ रहे हो, at one time it would interest you in a different way, at another time it would interest you in a different way, depending upon your physical and emotional state. आप कितने थके हुए हैं, आपके माइंड पे और कितने प्रेशर्स हैं, are you feeling well or not, are there other tasks or chores to do, is there anything that is bothering you, are you in a happy mood or you are unhappy, whether you are genuinely interested in reading that particular text at that time or not. ये सारे factors, they affect your reading and your interpretation of the text. बहुत सारी दफ़ा आप लोग कहते होंगे कि अच्छा ये उस दिन पढ़ा था, उस दिन तो बहुत अच्छा लग रहा था, बहुत मज़ा आ रहा था उसमें, but today I do not enjoy doing that. Well, as a matter of fact, it is a part of the same text that you read the other day. But because of your physical and mental state that is different on both the days, on each of those days, the result is that your response as a reader to the text is completely different. The reader does not operate in isolation but interacts with the meaning, material and the situation in which the reading occurs. Again, as I said earlier, that the reader, the text and the reading process, these cannot be separated. The reader, text and the context, they are interrelated. So the reader cannot be placed in isolation for his or her analysis of his or her condition or his or her state of mind or even the physical state. In considering the reader, we include all the capacities, abilities, knowledge and experiences that a person brings to the act of reading. Reader, you see, is a complete package in himself or herself. Suppose you are reading a text on a particular topic. What can be that topic for you? For example, it is blood donation. So your experience of donating blood, how far it was complicated, how far it was terrifying, how far it went smooth, how far it was satisfying for you as a human being to donate blood to somebody, or at all if you do not have any experience of donating blood. Number one thing. Number two, if you do not have any real life experience of this, how far you have read about blood donation, what knowledge you have built through the context in which you have lived, आपकी जितनी information, जितना knowledge आपके पास उस topic पे है, that would create you as a package, as a reader, for understanding what is said. Then your capabilities and abilities related to reading comprehension as a reader would involve कि आपकी vocabulary कितनी है, how far you can understand easy or difficult, simple or complex sentence structures, what is your speed of reading, what is your general comprehension level, what is your general IQ, how do you generally perform on different activities when it comes to cognitive activities. ये सारी बातें आपको एक complete package बनाती हैं as a reader, and this complete package interacts with the text. As a result, the understanding or the meaning making takes place, and this understanding or meaning making is completely dependent upon the other factors in which reader is a the type of reader, what I would say, is a very important fact. Continuing on the contribution of the reader towards reading comprehension, I would say the reader brings to the act of reading his or her cognitive capabilities, that is his or her attention, memory, critical analytical ability, inferencing, and visualization. How a reader can and how far a reader can critically analyze something, how he or she infers meanings, and how far the imaginative capabilities of a reader work. All this really matters to the act of reading and to the process of reading comprehension. Motivation that the reader brings to the text is also an important factor. Motivation means a purpose for reading, interest in the content, or self-efficacy as a reader. आप genuinely कितने interested हैं उस area में जिसको आप पढ़ रहे हैं. Your liking or disliking, your degree of liking or disliking even would matter a lot as far as the act of reading is concerned. Another thing that the reader brings to the act of reading is his or her knowledge. Knowledge includes vocabulary, topic knowledge, linguistic and discourse knowledge. Sentences कैसे construct हुए में हैं, how the meaning is packed in them, etc. Knowledge of comprehension strategies. If you know as a reader what are comprehension strategies and how they can be used as tools to exploit a text, that really makes a difference as a reader. A reader who does not know anything about the comprehension strategies maybe would not be in a better position to interact with the text. And finally, as I said, a reader brings to the act of reading all the experiences of life, whatsoever background knowledge that you have. As we have discussed the text and the reader, now we move forward to the next point, that is the context. The reading context is something very important, and actually when you are dealing with any particular kind of text, the context in which it is set and the context in which you read it is very important. For example, stories are typically read for enjoyment or to experience a lived-through event, to understand human characters and emotions, and to recognize and appreciate the author's craft. So, if this is the context, if this is the purpose, your comprehension of text would be different from some other purpose or some other context. On the other hand, informational material is usually read to garner important information about a topic. Again, if the informational material is not given in a narrative form, it is in an argumentative form, it is given with the help of examples, or it is given with the help of explanations or references. In each case, the context becomes different and the interpretation would depend on that. These different purposes, reading for information and reading for pleasure mainly, require different approaches to the act of reading. So the context, आप क्यों पढ़ रहे हैं, what is the purpose that the writer has written it for, and what is the purpose that you are reading it for, would largely affect what kind of interaction you have with the text as a reader. I hope by this point you are clear about the importance of reading comprehension and the factors involved in that. Moving forward to more practical aspects of it and helping you understand what strategies can enable better reading comprehension, I am going to share some reading comprehension strategies with you. But before that, I would explain what a reading comprehension strategy means. A reading comprehension strategy is a cognitive or behavioral action that is enacted under particular contextual conditions with the goal of improving some aspect of comprehension. So the ultimate goal of a comprehension strategy, a reading comprehension strategy, is to improve some aspect of reading comprehension, but mainly it is a cognitive or behavioral action, which means a comprehension strategy that is used for reading can be a mental process, or it can be simply about your behavior, your attitude, your response towards a text, or even towards the reading activity itself. Reading comprehension strategies are tools that proficient readers use to solve the comprehension problems they encounter in texts. Well, Zimmerman and Hutchins 2003 have identified 7 reading comprehension strategies that I found relevant to you and your context. I have given these 7 strategies here. Strategy number 1 that is used for reading comprehension is activating or building background knowledge. Number 2, using sensory images. Third reading strategy is the ability to question or questioning. Fourth, making predictions and inferences. And number 5 is determining main ideas. The 6th reading strategy that is shared by Zimmerman and Hutchins is using fix-up options. Using fix-up options and synthesizing. Well, each of these reading comprehension strategy has its own importance and its own significance. So let us think about each one of these one by one. Let us see how they help us or how we can develop them as our tools to help us do reading in an efficient way. Number 1, activating background knowledge. How does prior knowledge affect reading? This is what it is. When we encounter new objects, we use everything we have learned from our previous experiences to understand the new thing. We relate it to the other similar looking objects that might be found in a similar location or used for a similar task. The same is true of reading. We use our past experiences with texts, language and people to generate meaning from texts. I would give you a very simple example from our daily life, how we actually use the past experience for understanding something new that we come across. Let us say that your brother has left a hurried note on his writing table as going to college, and as you come to his room you see that note, and the note says, my cycle's tire got punctured, and since its brakes are not working well, I am going to this college on public transport. Now, this message in itself seems very explicit, very clear. The writer, though written in a hurry, has explained completely and in detail what he wanted to convey. He has told that he got his cycle's tire punctured and the brakes are not working well, so he is using public transport to go to the college. Nothing is left implicit. However, even in this explicit situation, if you think for a while, you would realize that you need to have some prior knowledge of the world to understand this text. Only if you know that your brother goes to the college on a cycle, and only if you know what type of an object a cycle is. What does it mean by tire, and what are the brakes? And what does it mean when somebody says the tire is punctured? What does it have as a relation to the functionality of the bicycle? Would the bicycle work if the tire is punctured or not? Can it be used for traveling or not? All this background knowledge, if you have, only you would be able to interpret this very, very explicitly written notice. Now relate it to your everyday reading activities that you do and the reading comprehension activities that you are asked to do as a student or as a learner of English language. Your background knowledge of the language, of the objects that you deal with, your knowledge that you process to reach the meaning that is conveyed. All this sets the background for your reading comprehension. So as a reader, you have to make a conscious effort. Remember, I said while explaining reading comprehension that reading comprehension is an intentional or a conscious process. So while reading, you need to consciously activate your background knowledge that helps you to be efficient reader. And activating background knowledge also means capitalizing on what you know about the topic and integrating that with new learning, linking the old knowledge to the new knowledge so that the gap is filled. The second point is using sensory images. Well, sensory images are created in your head from a very detailed description of something, often using more than one of the 5 senses, that is sight, smell, taste, touch and hearing. Using mental images such as visualization to assist them in remembering or understanding events or characters. आसान अल्फाज में अगर मैं कहूँ तो I would say, as a reader, when you try to comprehend some reading material, try to visualize that. The sensory images can be what you imagine in your head as you read the story. For example, you imagine what is happening in a piece of writing, the book or the poem or the story, whatsoever you are reading. So it is actually like a little screen inside your head, जिसके ऊपर पूरा मंजर चल रहा होता है, जो आप पढ़ रहे होते हैं उसकी एक मेंटल पिक्चर उसके ऊपर ड्रॉ हो रही होती है. That helps you understand the text. Well, readers, the third strategy for comprehension is questioning, and if you look at the screen you would see I have just given a few question marks here. just to trigger your background knowledge of what actually questioning is. Questioning, the ability to question is the ability to challenge, the ability to critically examine, the ability to disagree, the ability to agree with a reason, etc. So your ability to evaluate or to judge through your questioning. And of course this does not mean loud questioning. Again, questioning here is a mental process where you challenge the information that comes to you and you judge and evaluate it against the previous knowledge that you have. The fourth point that I would like to share as a good reading comprehension strategy is making predictions and inferences. In our daily lives, we predict a lot and we make a lot of inferences. Same is to be done with the text. Making predictions about what will happen, checking them, that is checking your predictions whether they come true or not as they go along with the text, and revising and evaluating them as needed. This is very, very important. What I mean by revising and evaluating is you predict something, as you go along with the text you find it does not happen like that, and sometimes 100% not like that, sometimes to some extent it is like that, and the rest of it goes in a different way. You revise your prediction. आप फिर एक अंदाज़ा लगाते हैं कि अच्छा शायद यूँ नहीं यूँ होगा, and you move on with the text. और इसी तरह से आप हमेशा अंदाजे लगाते रहते हैं. Some of those would be they would prove to be true, the others would not prove to be true. What is important is your ability to make predictions. It is not important that every time your prediction is true. After all, you are not the writer of that text. The writer has written something that you are trying to guess. But why this guessing game in reading, I would say, is important? Because it gives you directions. अगर आपका कुछ अंदाज़ा होता है किसी की चीज़ के बारे में, आपने कुछ गेस किया होता है कि this is how it would be, it helps you to move through the text speedily, not only speedily or rapidly, but also more efficiently. Determining main ideas. Well, do you remember what I talked about, the main idea of a text? Do you remember all that I talked about a topic sentence while doing my first session on reading? That exactly is what here means. Well, as you look at your screen, you would see options 6 and 7 that are the two more strategies that are used for reading comprehension, using fix-up options and synthesizing. I have left these open for you to think about and to see what these are. I would also like you to search for a while on your net to find what using fix-up options are or what synthesizing is. I would just drop a few clues for you. Fix-up options, as the very words fix-up shows, your ability to help sort out the confusions in any reading process and fix them, or the problems in a text to fix them in the reading comprehension process. Whereas synthesizing deals with, you see, matching, resembling, bringing the strands together of all the pieces of information so that you can reach a final judgment about whatsoever you are reading. Synthesizing actually is the process, dear students, where you have one piece of information and you have the other piece of information and you bring them together, and the purpose of bringing them together is to match them, to compare and to contrast them in order to see whether they fit in with each other or not. So in that process where आप हर चीज़ को you check against the other things that you find through the process of reading comprehension, फिर आप कहते हैं कि yes, this is possible, या ये चीज़ जो है no, this is not possible as a meaning of this particular part of the text, क्योंकि ये तो बिल्कुल contradictory है to the other parts. This is what we call synthesizing. The 7 reading comprehension strategies that I have shared with you, they have various purposes that they fulfill. They are not without any purpose. Since reading is one of the most important academic tasks faced by students, these strategies are designed to improve reading comprehension by supporting you. And the purposes are, number 1, to enhance understanding of the content information presented in a text. Number 2, to improve understanding of the organization of information in a text. पहली चीज contents को understand करने में help करती हैं these strategies. The second point, to improve understanding the organization of information. How different parts of information, how different layers of information, how different organizational patterns that are used, such as paragraphs, how all these things are organized within the text. Reading comprehension helps you understand all that. The purpose of using these reading comprehension strategies is also to make reading a more active process. A process in which you as a reader are more involved, and you are involved in the meaning making process as well. Another purpose of reading comprehension strategies is to increase personal involvement in the reading material. You as a person, as an individual, आपकी interaction with the text. This is what these strategies are for. And finally, to promote critical thinking and evaluation of reading material, and to enhance registration and recall of text information in memory. Critically इसको examine और evaluate करने की ability, and then to register it so that later on it can be recalled जब आपको उस information की ज़रूरत पड़े. I hope you would agree with me, my dear students, that sometimes you read a text and you really think you understand that. However, later on, when say after a few hours or a few days or a few weeks, when you need that information, you cannot recall that. Well, partially it is because of your poor reading comprehension, where actually you think that you have understood it, but because you have not understood it in a systematic way, now you can neither recall it, nor you can, you see, in a systematic way connect it to that particular situation where in a new context you want to recall that. Advantages of using reading comprehension strategies are many. I have just presented a few here for you. Number 1, improved reading comprehension skills can positively impact many facets of students' academic performance. मैंने आपसे पहले भी कहा था, most of the academic activities of a student revolve around reading. Even if you are involved in some writing activity or some examination activity for that purposes, I would say a lot of reading is involved in that, directly or indirectly. That is why reading comprehension itself and the strategies related to reading comprehension become very, very important for you. Another advantage is that students who have effective reading skills and who read effectively and understand reading assignments with better reading comprehension, they are better prepared for class, leading to improved class participation and more accurate and complete notes. At this point, I would like to raise a question for you to ask yourself. What about you as distant learners? Well, as distant learners, you need reading skills even more than others, because a lot of it is to be done on individual level, where no other support apart from my sessions and some reading material that is to be provided, you would not have any other support. Another advantage is that student interest and motivation in a subject is often fostered when one understands the reading assignments. In addition, as students gain proficiency in reading, self-esteem improves. आप जितना बेहतर तौर पे पढ़ के समझ सकते हैं, उससे of course it would add to your confidence. लेकिन जनाबे वाला सवाल तो ये है कि what about the failure of reading comprehension? If reading comprehension fails, what to do? Well, if reading comprehension fails, ignore that section of text and read on. कोई बहुत ज़्यादा मायूसी की बात नहीं है. If you do not understand a particular passage or a particular extract, move on. Suspend judgment and look ahead for clarification. So let us suppose you are reading, I would say, an extract of 10 paragraphs. If on paragraph 3 you are stuck up and you do not find what it exactly is about, or you think you do not comprehend it properly, it's all right. Skip and ignore and suspend your judgment, which means जो भी आपकी उस पैराग्राफ की इंफॉर्मेशन के बारे में whatsoever your evaluation is or your critical analysis is, hold on for a while, suspend it for a while, delay it for a while, postpone it for a while and look ahead for clarification. अगले पैराग्राफ पे चले जाएं, आगे पढ़ें. मे बी पैराग्राफ 4 or 5, as you would read those paragraphs, you would be clear on what you were not able to understand in paragraph 3. Another strategy that you can use in case of the failure of reading comprehension, I would say it is a very, very useful one. It is to form a tentative hypothesis and read on to see if you are correct. Let us suppose वो जो paragraph 3 जहाँ पर आप फंस गए थे, जहाँ पर आपको समझ नहीं आ रही थी what does it exactly mean, form a tentative hypothesis. एक temporary सा idea एक develop कर लें कि शायद इसका मतलब ये है. ये जो word है ना शायद, ये उसके साथ ज़रूर लगाएं and read on to see if you are correct. And then read on carefully and consciously through paragraphs 4, 5, 6 and onwards to check कि वो जो आपने सोचा था, वो जो आपने अंदाज़ा लगाया था उस point पे, whether it is correct or not. With this approach, I think you can develop your comprehension of that particular paragraph as well. एक और बड़ा आसान सिंपल सी स्ट्रेटजी है जो हम एक्चुअली लाइफ में बहुत सारी दफ़ा यूज़ करते हैं व्हेन रीडिंग कॉम्प्रिहेंशन फेल्स, दैट इज़ टू री रीड द करंट सेंटेंस. वो सेंटेंस इसको एक दफ़ा पढ़ के समझ नहीं आया, रीड इट ट्वाइस, रीड इट थ्राइस, यू कैन इवन रीड इट 4 or 5 times, दैट डजंट मैटर. उस पर कोई पाबंदी नहीं है, बाय द वे. Another piece of advice would be reread the previous context. अगर आपको कोई एक सेंटेंस को एक बात while reading something you do not comprehend that, go to the previous sentence or the previous set of sentences, जो context जिसमें वो कहा गया है, read it again. और अगर फिर भी समझ ना आए तो फिर क्या करें? Go to an expert source. फिर जनाबे वाला किसी से पूछ भी सकते हैं आप, मतलब उस पर कोई पाबंदी नहीं है. You can always consult somebody for that. But as an independent and individual reader, I would say the first 5 strategies that I have given here in case of reading comprehension failure, I think they work almost in all the situations. So Janab, this was the part that I was sharing with you with reference to reading comprehension, factors involved in reading comprehension, strategies related to reading comprehension, and the issues of the failure of reading comprehension. But now I bring you to some activities, because I think reading comprehension is not something that is to be talked about. Again, it is a skill. And because it is a skill, it is to be developed through practice. So I have some activities here for you to have some practice on reading comprehension. Of course, we would start with comparatively easier comprehension paragraphs. At this point, I would also like to say that since as a distant learner teacher, I do not interact with you directly, and I'm not very much familiar exactly who you are or what type of students, what kind of groups of students would be dealing with these texts. So I have included different levels of reading activities, comparatively of higher difficulty level and some of comparatively lower difficulty level. So you might find some slightly difficult for yourself, some as comparatively more easy than you would expect, but these overall are designed to cater for the needs of different types of learners. Having said that, I would bring you to activity 1. The important part of this activity is that you have only 1 minute, which means 30 seconds time for reading and 30 seconds time for sorting it out to answer the questions to check your reading comprehension. ये एक छोटा सा extract है, going to the mountains, that is given here. अच्छा, one strategy that we are going to use from here onwards is we have already done some sessions on listening. अब listening में भी to check listening comprehension or to develop listening comprehension, what you do is कि आप कुछ भी सुनते हैं और फिर आप क्वेश्चंस को आंसर करते हैं. रीडिंग में ये है कि यू रीड और फिर आप क्वेश्चंस को आंसर करते हैं, तो यू डेवलप योर रीडिंग कॉम्प्रिहेंशन, यू प्रैक्टिस इट. What I'm going to do is I'm going to integrate these two skills here. तो अब मैं ये करूँगी कि if you are going to use it for your reading comprehension right now, तो turn the volume of your PC or your device on which you are playing this session right now, turn the volume down, put it to silent, and read this in 30 seconds and then go to the questions on the next slide, and when you go to the next slide you can turn the volume up again. You can use the same activity for checking your listening comprehension or for having some practice for listening comprehension. For that purpose, I'm going to read this. In that case, you would not look at the slide, and what you would do is you would just listen to me without looking at the slide, and on the basis of that you would try to answer the questions that are given on the next slide. So your time starts now. Going to the mountains. Jane and John are twins. They live with their mother and dad. They live in a town that never gets cold. The town never has snow in the winter. But they can see the mountains in the distance, and the mountains have snow. Sometimes the twins' parents take them to the mountains. Everyone puts on heavy jacket. They all wear fuzzy mittens on their hands. They each have a warm winter cap. The family enjoys playing in the snow. They make a huge circle like a track in the snow. That circle is like a track. They chase each other around the track. They slip, they slide. They get wet when they fall down, but that snow play is fun. With this, we come to the questions. Based on your understanding of the passage, I would like you to answer the questions. Question number 1 is, what would Jane and John look for far away to the mountains? Sorry, why would Jane and John look far away to the mountains? Question number 2 is, how far away are the mountains? And question number 3 is, how does the family prepare for snow play? As far as the answers of this activity are concerned, well, here I have provided the answers. Question number 1 was, why would Jane and John look far away to the mountains? The answer is, because their town has never snow in the winter. Question number 2 was, how far away are the mountains? The answer is, the mountains are at the distance. And question number 3 was, how does the family prepare for snow play? Well, they make a huge circle like a track in the snow. That circle is like a track. They chase each other around the track, they slip, they slide. So this is how they play. Well, I would say it is not necessary to answer these questions exactly in these words as I have taken from the paragraph or the extract. You can answer in your own words, but mainly the meaning of what you respond to as an answer to these questions should be the same as is given here in these answers. With this, I bring you to another small activity. For this activity, you have 1 minute's time. I would do the same procedure of reading it out. You can turn the volume down for your reading activity. Some very deep lakes. A Great Lake means a very large lake. North America has 5 Great Lakes. The 5 Great Lakes are large and deep. They are deep enough for very big ships. The Great Lakes are between Canada and the United States. The names of the lakes are Superior, Michigan, Huron, Erie, and Ontario. These lakes all connect to each other through rivers and canals. Ships from all over the world can sail on the Great Lakes. First, these ships travel on the Atlantic Ocean. They carry heavy loads of boxes and freight. From the Atlantic Ocean, the ship enters a deep river. This river connects to the Great Lakes. The ships continue to travel. Around the Great Lakes are cities called ports. The ships deliver their boxes and freight at these ports. Then the ships sail back to the ocean. With this, we come to the questions related to this extract that had 2 small paragraphs. Question number 1 is, what are the 3 jobs of the ships in this story? Question number 2 is, what are ports? And question number 3, name the 5 Great Lakes. Here I have provided the answers for these questions. For question number 1, what are the 3 jobs of the ships in this story? The answer is, they carry heavy loads of boxes and freight. They travel and deliver them to the ports. Then these ships sail back to the ocean. Question number 2 was, what are ports? And the answer is, around the Great Lakes are cities called ports. So you see, you can construct your answer through your reading comprehension in different ways. What I have given here as an answer is exactly taken from the text or the extract. These are the words as they were written there, but you can construct them, you can structure them according to your own choices. For example, you can say ports are the cities that are around these Great Lakes. And then of course the third question was about the names of the 5 Great Lakes. Here the names are given as they are given in the text. At this point I would like you to give a very useful tip. And the tip is, take notes. If you have to do a comprehension activity, especially in that case, it is always good to take notes of what you read. And especially in the case of long reading texts, the notes taking exercise or activity is a big help to remember the main points that enable you to do comprehension. Well, how this notes taking can be helpful? For example, in the previous extract, the names of 5 lakes that were mentioned, maybe you could have taken a note of them, and that could have helped. Otherwise it is difficult to remember and you have to locate back in the paragraph. Well, here I have another activity for you. Again, it is a 1-minute activity. Again, you can turn the volume down and you can just read it yourselves for the reading activity, and when you use it for listening activity, that is for listening comprehension practice, you can turn the volume up and you can listen to as I read that. This time try to, whether you are using it for reading comprehension practice or for listening comprehension practice, I would say it maybe it can be a bit more useful if you take some notes of important points so that you can answer the questions later on at the end of the comprehension exercise. So here we go. Sweaters to wear. All over the world, people wear sweaters. In very cold places, people wear heavy and warm sweaters. Those sweaters are sometimes itchy. They are itchy if they are made of wool. Wool is animal hair. That is why wool sweaters are very warm. Some people do not need warm wool sweaters. They wear another kind of sweater made from cotton. A cotton sweater is soft and cool. Cotton comes from the fuzz of a special plant. Cotton is not made from animal hair. In very cold places, people might wear a sweater under a jacket. In nice and warm places, they wear a sweater instead of a jacket. A sweater is a nice piece of clothing. It looks nice with pants or a skirt. I would also like you to see the visuals that are attached to this reading comprehension or listening comprehension passage. Maybe look at the visuals would help you understand something about what the text is mainly about. Well, here are the questions related to this particular extract. Try to answer these questions using the basic notes that you have taken within that few seconds activity while you were reading that extract. Why do some people need wool sweaters? Number 2, what 3 words describe wool sweaters? Number 3, for what is animal hair used? Take almost 30 seconds time to answer all these questions. That is 10 seconds for almost each question. Once you are done, move on to the next slide. Here I have 2 more questions for you. You can quickly read these and answer these questions in 10 seconds for each question. Why is a cotton sweater soft? Question number 5 is, what can a person wear with a sweater? Okay, now if you have answered those questions, I would like you to look at this slide. Here I have provided the questions at the top with the answers at the bottom of the slide. For question number 1, why do some people need wool sweaters? The answer is, wool is animal hair. That is why wool sweaters are very warm and people wear them. Question number 2 was, what 3 words describe wool sweaters? The 3 words are itchy, warm and heavy. Question number 3, for what is animal hair used? It is used to make warm wool sweaters. Question number 4, why is a cotton sweater soft? Because cotton comes from the fuzz of a special plant. And finally, the last question was, what can a person wear with a sweater? And the answer is jacket, pants or skirts. Ask yourself how far your note-taking helped you in doing this comprehension activity. I am sure notes-taking would have helped you at least to some extent when it comes to doing this activity. With this, we move on. This is our last activity for today's session. Again, this is a 1-minute activity. I would like you to read and answer the questions given at the end. Here on the screen, you can see a chart that is about pet care. Study this pet care chart. Give yourself 1 minute to read this chart. Since the chart is comparatively thicker in terms of materials provided, so you need to be speedy in reading. A few tips that I would like to give you would include, look at the headings at the top. Also look at the information that is provided on the left side margin and then read it quickly. We would do the same process. I would read it out for you. You can use it in that case for a listening activity. Otherwise, turn the volume down and read it yourselves. So here I go. Cats. Handling. Lift a cat using 2 hands, one under its forelegs and one under its rump. A cat should not be dropped, for it will not always land on its feet. Brush its coat regularly. Feeding. Bones that may splinter should not be fed to cats. Provide a high protein, high fat commercial cat food. If food is not moist, provide water. Housing. A box with a cushion or a blanket can be used for sleeping. Provide a scratching post to keep claws worn down. Dogs. Don't allow a dog to roam freely. Groom a dog regularly. Check that its ears are clean and its nails are trimmed. To avoid the loss of its natural oils, bathe it only when it is dirty. Feeding. Serve a balanced diet of commercial dog feed. Feed once or twice a day depending on the dog's condition. Give the dog large uncooked beef bones or artificial bones. Provide water. Housing. Protect the dog from dampness and from extremes of heat and cold. A warm, dry blanket can be used for bedding. Clean the bedding regularly. Fish. Handling. Don't mix large and small fish. Net fish gently. To prevent the spread of diseases, isolate each new fish for a few days before adding it to your tank. Feeding. Check with the fish dealer about the proper diet for the fish. Don't put more food in the tank than the fish can eat in 5 minutes. After 10 or 15 minutes, all leftover food should be removed to prevent an accumulation of rotting food. Housing. Don't use fish bowls because the fish can't get enough oxygen. Use distilled water. Provide proper lighting. Be sure the water doesn't contain chlorine. I hope you have read it. With this, I take you on to the exercise related to this. Now use information from the pet care chart to help you decide whether each statement is true or false. Write T or F on the blank. You can simply pronounce it in your case. The healthiest dogs are bathed every day. Number 2, cats should not be fed chicken bones. Number 3, a fish eats all it needs within 5 minutes. Number 4, dogs with heavy coats need no protection from cold weather. Number 5, all kinds of fish can live together happily. And finally, number 6, always use 2 hands to pick up a cat. If you have marked them as true or false, let's move forward. Here is the answer key for you. Check yourself against the answer key that I have provided. The healthiest dogs are bathed every day. False. Cats should not be fed chicken bones. Again false. A fish eats all it needs within 5 minutes. Well, true. Dogs with heavy coats need no protection from cold weather. Again it is false. All kinds of fish can live together happily. Oh, it's false again. Always use 2 hands to pick up a cat. Yes, very true. You might have thought that the activity has come to an end, but based on the same comprehension passage extract, the activity continues. Here I have a different kind of activity for you. You have to identify each sentence, one of the options to complete the sentences that are given here. Use the bold-faced words as clues for yourself, and if you need help, look back at the pet care chart once again. At this point, I would like to say those who have taken some notes, maybe they would not have to look at the chart again. Commercial pet food is dash. A, made at home. B, sold in stores. C, poor in quality. Number 2, if a dog's skin loses its natural oils, it will become dry and scaly, soft and moist, red and patchy. Number 3, when you isolate a new fish, you dash, put its bowl in the closet, introduced it to your other fish, keep it away from your other fish. Number 4, leftover food accumulates in a fish tank. It will dash, make your fish very fat, rot and cause disease. Option C is be eaten later as a midnight snack. Question 5. Tropical fish won't get enough oxygen if they, option A, are kept in a bowl rather than a tank, B, don't breathe deeply, and option C, lack a well-balanced diet. And the last question in this part of the activity was, a basic grooming tool for the dogs and cats is a dash. A, stethoscope, B, bucket, C, brush. So take your time of a few seconds to solve this activity out for yourselves. Use your all comprehension strategies for that. Dear students, here I have provided the answer key for each one of these. Correct answer for number 1, commercial pet food is dash. The correct answer is sold in stores. Question 2, if a dog's skin loses its natural oils, it will become dash. Correct option is A, dry and scaly. Number 3, when you isolate a new fish, you dash. Correct option is C, you keep it away from other fish. Question number 4 was, if leftover food accumulates in a fish tank, it will dash. And the correct option is, it will rot and cause disease. Question number 5, tropical fish won't get enough oxygen if they dash. And the correct answer for this is A, if they are kept in a bowl rather than a tank. And the last question, a basic grooming tool for both dogs and cats is dash. And the correct option is C. The basic tool for grooming dogs and cats is a brush. My dear students, with this we come to the end of today's session. Review of today's lesson is provided here. We started with what reading comprehension is. I established a relationship between the reader and the reading process. I talked about mental process of reading comprehension, what mental or cognitive abilities are involved in it. Then I shared with you the factors affecting comprehension. We worked on the triangle of reader, text and context. I explained each one of these separately and gave some examples to relate it to your lives. Then I shared some reading comprehension strategies. Benefits of using these strategies were also discussed. A very crucial point for a student or a learner, especially when it comes to English as a second language, was addressed, and the question was, what if reading comprehension fails? I gave you some tips on how to handle the situations where reading comprehension fails. And finally, we had some activities and exercises to improve reading comprehension. Well, dear students, this session was on reading comprehension. However, reading comprehension is a very, very complex and complicated process, as I said, and it needs a lot of practice. Secondly, because reading is one of the skills that distant learners need to have as a strong skill for themselves, that is why one more session on reading comprehension is added in your course. The next session would again be on reading comprehension, that would address a few more issues, and that is basically designed to give you more practice with the help of some activities. The varieties of levels are introduced in those activities depending upon the practice levels on which you are and depending upon the varied needs of different students. With this, we come to the end of today's session. I have already told you what is next. That is another session on reading comprehension. So good luck for that session. Thank you very much.